All right, well, let's call the meeting to order and take roll call
Brenda Morris,
here.
Melanie,
Here.
Jennifer,
Here.
Ned,
Here.
Wesley,
Here.
Sean, I believe he's absent. Ron
Here.
and Alexandra.
Here.
Okay, Zyra, is there any public attendees?
Yes, we have about 5.
5, okay. All right. As everybody probably knows, the reason we're having this public hearing is to vote on the proposed rate increases for water, for potable and non-potable water, wastewater, and a couple of other things. And we've got 5 minutes for, well, we have a total of 30 minutes maximum for the public to speak. If anybody wants to give testimony, does any public speaker want to give any testimony?
There are a few people that are raising their hand, Brenda.
All right. I
Were we
can't,
supposed to have the staff report first or the public testimony first?
The staff report. Do you have the script in front of you?
yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot one thing I did forget too. I need a declaration of any conflicts of interest or from anybody on the committee.
Just a general question. What would constitute a conflict of interest?
If you have a financial interest in any of the utilities, that would be one. Or if any other outside influence other than what you've heard at our meetings is influencing you either pro or against any of the proposed rate increases. I mean, those are the obvious ones. Anyone? Okay, then let's have the staff reports, please.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Deb Gallardi, Gallardi Rothstein Group. I've been working with the committee and the city on developing, analyzing the financial information for each of the utility systems. And we will walk through that information this evening. So let me share the PowerPoint. Okay, can you see, let's go to the presentation mode. Can you see just the cover slide?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll start with a little overview, just since there's probably some folks who are not familiar with the rate setting process. There are 3 components generally to that process, and I need to, let's see if I can move, there we go, move that out of the way. The first is to identify the financial needs of each of the utility systems. For the utilities, that those components of financial requirements are the capital improvements, the investments in the system, both new investments and existing debt service that was used to fund prior improvements. Operation and maintenance costs, which are the personnel, materials, and services to run the systems, and then planning for emergency contingencies and reserves should revenues fall short of expectations or expenses higher. And as you'll see as we walk through this, the reserves also help to allow for phasing in of rate increases and addressing short-term fluctuations in capital investment needs. Then we evaluate the revenue sources that are available to meet the financial needs, what revenue is projected from existing rates and other fees and charges, including systems development charges that are paid by new development. And then we, from there, evaluate what revenue increases are needed for each system to cover the projected costs. The other component is that following standard industry practice, we evaluate both the rate structures and the costs that are paid by each customer class based on their usage requirements, and so to align the rates with how the costs are incurred by the systems to meet their different service needs. That is the rate review process, which the city goes through every couple of years to stay current, make sure there aren't major modifications in the rates. These adjustments every couple of years to keep pace with the requirements. So the systems that we're talking about this evening and that are part of this process are the water system, the sanitary sewer or the wastewater system, we use those terms interchangeably, and the stormwater system, as well as a component of street maintenance. And it's important to understand that these are utility enterprises, that they're not funded by general taxes, and therefore they are supported entirely by revenues from the system. So 90% of that is the utility rates, 90% or more, depending on the system. There's minor other fees and charges that go to, that are charged for specific types of services. When a new development permit there, is pulled, there are some permit fees, there's interest income on those reserves, and of course the systems development charges, which are specific to capital improvements associated with meeting the needs of future development. So the rates are the primary funding source for all of the costs. As I mentioned, there are manuals established by the industry committees, American Water Works Association, Water Environment Federation, Environmental Protection Agency has some guidelines too for systems where there's been federal funding. And so the principles, they're not overly prescriptive in terms of exactly, you'll see a variety of practices used across the state and across the country, but generally the principles are the same, that we evaluate the services that are provided. And for Newberg, that includes things like looking at the potable water system that serves the majority of customers versus the non-potable water, which is a lower quality product that's used only for irrigation. So pricing those services based on how the costs are incurred. Fixed versus the variable costs of the system. The majority of costs of any of these systems are fixed in that as customers use less water, discharge less to the sewer system, that doesn't result in a reduction in costs in the short term. Over the course of a year or longer, those costs, there are a minimum amount of staffing and maintenance that continues to be needed for those systems. So the rate structure has to ensure that there are stable revenues to pay for those costs, because in addition to the commodity, customers are paying for the availability of that service. The intensity of use, the rates reflect that. So you'll see different rates by customer class. Some commercial customers discharge water that's of higher pollutant loads, wastewater strength than other customers. So the rates reflect that and recover costs accordingly. Different customer classes require different have different seasonal uses of water. More irrigation drives up the peak water use. That drives the sizing of pipes that need to be maintained, and those investments in capital infrastructure. So the water system reflects those differences in use by customer class. And for the transportation utility fee that's used to pay for street maintenance, the rates reflect different intensity of use of that transportation network. So the guiding principle and most equitable defensible rates are those that recover costs from customer classes in proportion to the service requirements. What it means, though, is people pay different rates. Within a customer class, generally, you pay based on the same rates, but your bill will be different based on how much you use. In terms of, as I mentioned, every 2 years, the city looks at these rates and makes adjustments as needed. The last rate update was initiated in 2020, carried forward recommendations that were implemented January 1st of 2021 and January 1st of 2022. Those rate increases for water and wastewater were 3.5% and 4%. For the non-potable system, that's the basically using reclaimed water for irrigation purposes. There was a rate adjustment in 2021 to realign those costs to the actual cost of service, and then an inflationary rate increases in 2022. The stormwater rates had the highest percentage increase, but the rates are substantially lower than water and the wastewater rates. And so that percentage increase translated into less than half of the increase of the larger water wastewater systems in terms of dollars. And then street maintenance actually went up only 2%, which is less than the inflation over that time period. These were when the committee convenes and we evaluate the systems, we don't just look out at a 2-year period, we look out at a 5 to 8 year period. The city needs to plan long-term for capital investments and make sure that rates are adjusted to meet those needs over that period of time and to minimize any rate spikes for any of the systems individually. So these same rate increases were projected for multiple years following this last January 1st, 2022. Just to give a little bit of perspective from the national survey that's conducted every couple of years by the American Water Works Association, the gray bars are what the consumer price index average was, and you can see in the 2018-2020 it exceeded 4%. So with the exception of stormwater, the rates have been going up less than the inflation and in recent years, and the national average over this longer period of time has been that rates have increased double the rate of inflation, because there is a need to begin to pay for the needed infrastructure replacement that exists in all of these systems. The pipes that are underground are getting old, need to be replaced. There are regulatory requirements and other factors that require significant investment in our utility systems. So that's the overview of the rate setting process. Now I'll talk about the findings for the 2022 rate update process. So there's, as always in these things, there's good news, bad news in terms of there are different factors that are influencing the rates, and the committee tries to weigh those factors and make recommendations to ensure the integrity of the systems, the services provided, and the financial performance. So the good news from the rate increase standpoint is that there has been steady customer growth, and actually growth beyond what was projected in the previous financial plans. That as growth is added to the systems, that means more ratepayers, more revenue, and it does mean more costs too, but generally not at the same rate. It's generally a net positive because of economies of scale. The city has did benefit from the low interest rates that we've had until recently. Those are projected to go up, and did refinance some existing debt to reduce those costs. And there has been a concerted effort to limit future borrowing as it makes sense to keep future interest costs low. There's definitely been the ability to leverage existing reserves, and now, as part of this process, grant funding that, for a long time, grant funding was not available for these systems, and now there is, generally across the country, there is renewed federal dollars for investing in infrastructure systems, and the city is a beneficiary of some of that. On the upward side, pressure forcing the rates to continue to increase is that we have lots of capital investment that's needed. As an industry, we have not kept pace with the need to replace infrastructure. A lot of the facilities are underground, they're not seen, and there's obviously the political will to keep rates affordable and minimize rate increases. But at a certain point, those investments need to be made in order to minimize more costly repairs in infrastructure. And some of that's driven by regulatory requirements. In the Northwest, we have seismic requirements and other regulations related to water quality, et cetera. And there's the public's demand for improved level of service with respect to roads, for example, and pavement maintenance. There is existing debt, particularly for wastewater, which has driven those rates up more than the other systems. And that was related to a major treatment plant expansion and upgrade and replacement that occurred previously. But the city will continue to pay off that debt over a 20-year period. There's some catch up from prior years with no rate increase. Generally speaking, the city, with its commitment to reviewing rates every 2 years, has made adjustments, incremental changes to rates to avoid that double-digit kind of increases that some communities are seeing. But there were some years where, for example, the transportation fees weren't increased at all the first year, couple of years after they were implemented. And then the last year they were implemented at rates below the level of inflation. So they're not keeping pace with rising pavement maintenance costs. And of course, the city's utility systems, like our own home financial budgets, are also impacted by rising inflation, even more so because of the fact that there has been so much inflation with respect to materials and that are needed for construction, steel, other things, lumber. So that is the situation facing the systems. And it is a balancing of looking at all of the various factors, projecting out what the costs are, the revenues, and determining what rate increases are needed to balance the level of risk and also and provide the level of service that's required and demanded by customers. This chart here just gives a snapshot of the different cost components for the systems, and the colored bars represent, the green is the operation and maintenance costs. That's the labor, chemicals, maintenance kind of costs, support of the other city services, general support services that are shared across all the different departments. And so for water and sewer, that represents about 2/3 of the costs. The other third of costs are related to capital, both existing debt and future capital improvements in the form of cash payments. For stormwater, the rates are right now, the majority of the costs are that the rates can support are related to operation and maintenance. There's very little bit of capital that can be done. The stormwater next to the street maintenance was the newest utility that was implemented, and the rates have been increased to first provide for the needed funding for the operation and maintenance of that system, and still has catching up to do with respect to the capital, being able to fund the capital improvements that are needed. So that's why that system has had the higher percentage rate increases compared to the other systems in recent years. Street maintenance is a fee that's dedicated for a single purpose, and that is pavement preservation for the street. So it's all about capital and street maintenance. I'm sure staff can go into more detail if there are questions about what do we need to do for these systems. And if anybody wants to really get in to the detail, they can, there are master plans that are available on the city's website and other places that talk about the needed investment in the systems. But just to give a high level overview, the water and wastewater systems are needing, facing improvement plans within a 5 to 8 year period of $30 to $35 million. The water system has to, again, seismic resiliency is definitely driving a number of the costs and the projects, providing a redundant water supply, seismic resiliency in the infrastructure, improvements to fire flow and pressure. There are some new state laws that are impacting how some development patterns in all the cities in the state, and the city has to replace water lines to provide for a higher level of density of development. So there are those issues at play. A number of these improvements are time specific, time sensitive. They have to be done within a period of time. So there isn't flexibility there. We have aging infrastructure. So the new water treatment plant would address a number of the different issues here, seismic issues, as well as replacement of aging infrastructure and ongoing replacement of the water mains, the pipes, and other efficiency upgrades. For the wastewater systems, as I mentioned, there's been recently major improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, but there are ongoing improvements still needed to lift stations, pipe lining, alignment, as well as continuing to address infiltration and inflow reduction, which is needed for water quality reasons. It also frees capacity in the system for discharges from customers. Stormwater addresses safety and flood control, erosion, pipe blockage, road related repairs, a number of things. It's a much lower CIP overall, 7 million, But again, there's a deficiency in the current rates to fund that. And as I mentioned, street maintenance is specific to pavement preservation with a focus on critical routes to schools and coordination with underground infrastructure projects that require the roads to be torn up anyway. This chart gives an idea of that, very important. Where are we today in our ability to fund capital versus where do we need to be to fund these improvements that are part of the current planning period? And you can see that water and sanitary provide quite a bit of funding already in the rates, though they need to increase, and water more than sanitary because of the more significant needs in the water system, and the fact the relative rates for water are currently below sewer. For stormwater, significant increase needed there to address, to get the cap of the rates able to fund capital improvements in the plan, and some increase as well for street maintenance. These figures are the orange bars, which show the average annual CIP cost that needs to come from rates specifically. This is already netting out additional debt for the water system, the grants that the city is projected to receive, and heavy utilization of existing reserves and systems development charges. So I'll show graphs for each system that just shows how the phasing of the capital improvement plan and some of these other funding sources that are at play, as well as this line here, which shows the current funding level. So anytime the bars are the blue part of the bars, which is that which needs to come from rates or reserves, when the blue bar exceeds the blue line, you see that we need, in that case, we're either needing to draw down reserves, which up here in the box, you can see that the 35 million, about 10 million of that is coming from existing reserves. So if the city didn't already have these reserves through prudent financial planning practices in the past, then you'd be looking at significantly higher rate increases, more debt needing to be issued. So that is helping quite a bit here to, you can see that the fluctuations, the variability of the annual expenses is great because these are large improvements. Some of these, a new water treatment plant is $12 million. And the committee talked quite a bit about the funding, and there was a recognition that issuing new debt in this case would be advantageous to the customers of Newberg. Even though it means incurring additional interest costs, it does allow the cost to be spread over a 20-year payback period, minimizing the annual impacts. And of course, the additional grant funding is assumed. And so but the rates still need to be increased to provide for some additional funding capacity. The other good thing on the water system is that some of the existing debt drops off during this planning period. So it's an opportunity to issue water for debt for the water treatment plant at a time when a portion of the debt drops off, and you kind of equalize some of that debt service. So to summarize, for the water system, capital improvements are driven by regulatory requirements and replacement needs. They are time sensitive. The city has to complete a number of these projects within the time specified by the state. Existing debt service of about $500,000 is retired in fiscal year 2026, about the same time that the new plant would need to be constructed or finish being constructed. So The timing of such generally is when you have a loan, you start paying that off after the construction, so it works out pretty well. Some additional debt, smaller amount, drops off at the very end of the planning period. The new debt, net of grants for the treatment plant, will help spread that very significant cost over a longer period of time. The rate increases are projected at 4% per year, system average, so similar to what has occurred in the last rate increases, which is lower than certainly current inflation. I heard that in the Pacific Northwest, I think the current rate of inflation is about 8%. So this is good news in the context of what other rising costs is, that these because of those existing reserves and the grants, the city can keep the rate increases at the level that was projected previously. The typical residential monthly bill, again, will depend on the amount of usage, but the typical range of usage, the increase is $2 to $2.50 per month. Water rate increases have been less than the national average, as I mentioned before, and are consistent with other regional cities. You can see this is, the city has compared itself to list of about a dozen different cities of similar size. And so that's what this chart shows. Newberg is third from the right here. So is in the top quartile, I guess. And this just, the different colors of the bars represent the fixed and the volume portion of the bill. So there are lots of other cities and even smaller cities, and some smaller, some larger, that have even higher rates. But this has just been the group of cities that have been we've used for comparison and benchmarking in the past. For the sanitary sewer system, this again shows your projected capital improvements. And that's in this case, in the green is the amount that needs to come from rates reserves, and the blue is from systems development charges. So here, systems development charges are being used to cash fund improvements, to extend pipelines, upsize pump stations, other things to address the needs of growth. And the blue line represents the current funding level. Once again, relying heavily on reserves, $8 million in this case, and even more heavily on SDCs. All of the systems, when the committee evaluates these the need for the rate increases, they are looking very closely at the level of reserves and how they can use reserves to minimize rate increases, but still maintain future flexibility and adequate reserves consistent with industry standard practice for emergency conditions. So here, the capital improvements are driven by permit requirements, system replacement and expansion. A small portion of the debt service will be retired in 2029. No new debt is planned, but there is significant debt that continues that is funded out of the rates. And so part of the continuing the rate increase, in this case 3.5%, is to be able to increase the amount of that the annual rates can fund for capital. Understanding again that inflation levels are significantly high, that limits, the city is impacted in the same way of pass-through costs, commodities, things that it purchases are also seeing escalating costs. So, but some of this rate increase is projected to provide for additional capital funding to meet those capital improvement needs. The rate increases significantly below what historically the national average is. This regional comparison, however, because of the past investment, most significantly, Newberg is on the highest end for this comparison. Again, there are other higher rates in the state. They're just not part of this comparison. But the projected increases both nationally and in many other local communities in Oregon, the 3.5% is below what nationally. This was a survey of wastewater utilities specifically, and what they are anticipating their rate increases are going to be. You can see the dark teal is the Newberg 3.5%, where other nationally it's closer to 4% for these, and these are large utilities specifically in this case. And I know that there are many other utilities in Oregon and elsewhere that will see much higher increases. The Citizen Rate Review Committee will review rate increases again in 23-24 to see if the 3.5% can be modified, brought down perhaps. For stormwater, there are fewer reserves to provide some offset to the needed capital improvements. So we're talking about, the funding level here just being about $500,000 per year, and looking at the plan of 7 million. There is some SDC, system development charge revenue, but the rates are going to need to continue to increase at a higher percentage rate than the other systems in order to address what is very much a backlog of improvements that are needed for this system. So the good news is, however, that the rate increase that is projected, again, remember I said there's those different factors, and one of the factors is been the stronger customer growth. That and there were some savings during the last couple of years in COVID, where things weren't savings in the short term that basically just got deferred. But the projected rate increases for the stormwater are 7.5%, which is down from 9% per year that had been forecasted for these same years in the prior plan. As I said, though, a 7.5% translates into $1 to $1.20, which is half of what the dollar increase is that the 4% for water would generate because of the higher rates. So stormwater bills, in terms of the community comparison here, are kind of in the middle of the range. There are still a couple of cities that don't charge stormwater fees, but that will change in the years ahead as well. Finally, the street maintenance. This just shows, as I said, the transportation utility fee that was implemented most recently of the systems, I believe in 2017, funds specifically pavement maintenance. There are other costs associated with the street system that are funded by gas taxes, state gas taxes, SDCs, federal, state grants. So this is a funding source that's targeted for a particular improvement. In this case, it's pavement maintenance. And so that's what it goes for. In order to keep pace with inflation, these increases need to go up. Again, just to maintain and hopefully at some point be able to provide greater level of maintenance and level of service. Again, part of the issue here was there were no increases in the first 2 years after it was implemented. Actual revenue has been a little bit below what was projected, and the rates haven't kept pace with inflation. So a 4% increase would result in typical residential monthly bill of 20 cents to a quarter. These are the lowest of the rates for residential, and they're the lowest of the other cities that charge transportation fees. Here, there's about 5 within the sample who don't charge for street maintenance. Putting this all together, each of the systems, and there are 2 other fees that appear on the municipal bill statement. That's the public safety and the communication officer that were put in place some years ago. Those aren't part of the rate review process. In one case, the public safety fee, staff is recommending an increase to the city council of that fee, but that will be discussed at a future city council meeting. Applying the rate increases that we just discussed, ranging from 3.5% sewer to 7.5% for storm, for a typical single family customer, which a typical single family customer uses about 700 cubic feet of water per month, about 500 cubic feet for sewer wastewater, and represents 1 dwelling unit for in terms of how the transportation utility fee and the storm are charged. So the increase in the monthly bill, when you combine all of the systems together, is $6.31 in the first year, $6.65 in the second year, and averages out to be just over 4%. The next steps after the committee does its deliberation this evening is that the city council meeting is on April 4th, and they will hear a similar presentation and the recommendations of the committee, and rate increases would not be effective until January 1st of the first one would be 2023 and then 2024. And that is the end of the presentation. So I'll turn it back to Brenda.
Okay, now it's time for public testimony. The time limitation total for the members of the public to present any testimony is 30 minutes. I understand that we have 5 members of the public out there. Is that correct, Sarah?
We have 8 attendees now.
And 8 attendees. Okay. Could you see how many of the attendees that wish to speak are proponents of the proposed rate increases?
Yeah, so if anyone that's a proponent, if they can raise their hand, that would be useful for me to see. It looks like there's just one.
All right, and could you state your name, please?
Okay, let me promote them to the panelists.
All right.
His name is Jim, but I don't think. If he can't be promoted, then I can allow him to speak.
Okay.
All right, let me allow him to talk.
Okay, sir, could you please state your name?
My name is James Faulkner.
And I understand that you speak in favor of the proposed rate increases. Could you please tell us?
I'm sorry. I'm having a little issue here. Hang on. You're asking me what? I'm not a proponent of it.
Okay, we would actually like to hear from people who are proponents of the proposed rate increases first.
Yes.
So,
I am
okay.
not one of those people.
All right, Dara, could you please ask, because I can't see the members of the public that wish to speak. So could you ask if there are any proponents of the proposed rate increases?
So Beatrice, I know your hand is up. Let me promote Beatrice since her hand is up.
Okay.
Jem, could you mute yourself for now?
Oh, yeah, hang on. Oh, I pull my hand.
So Beatrice should be on the panelist side now.
Okay. All right. Beatrice, could you state your full name? Hello?
Oops, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Beatrice,
Excellent.
full name, please.
My name is Beatrice Fala. I have been a Newberg resident for 35 years. I've owned my own home here on Willamette Street for the last 25 years. And I'm just concerned with a rate increase at the time when people are tight with money. And one of the things that I didn't notice in the presentation was just a real active effort to reduce cost. I don't know if that is possible, but I know you were indicating that you refinanced some of the debt that had occurred before. Again, as a single person here, last September, I was on vacation. I was away from my home for 4 weeks. And so I just had someone come in to take care of my cat. And my water bill was still $85. In regards to the increases that you showed percentage-wise, my bill in average is about $100. I'm concerned that these rate increases are going to put me in a tough spot. Also, I'm concerned. I see all of the new development that is in surrounding areas, and I can only hope that folks there are being required the new construction, that they are participating in buying or paying for some of these new water lines. I observed here on Willamette Street the water line being replaced to accommodate new constructions, and then they tore up the road again about a year later to replace all of this storm drains. That is one example that I feel is a little bit waste, and I would hope that some of that would be able to be thought through a little bit more in the future. And I'd like to see, these type of things part of our conversation. I thank you for your time and allowing me to provide input. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't appear that anybody is speaking in favor of the rate increases. Could you please verify that, Sarah?
I think you might be right because no one else has their hand raised.
Okay, well, let's hear. We've already heard from Beatrice, who apparently opposes the rate increase. James would have been next. I understand James is an opponent.
Jim, yeah.
rate increase. So why don't we hear from him next?
Jim, go ahead.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of questions actually, and a couple of comments. You're looking at your chart here shows 4% per year, but that in over 2 years, we're talking $13 a month increase, which is about 9% over 2 years. And you're talking about you said no public safety. Well, it's at the bottom of your chart. You show a $4 a month fee that's being charged, and also your water fees. I don't know how they're calculated, and I can't find anybody in the city that can tell me how they're calculated, because you base it on the sewer rate, which is the highest of anybody. Is mind-boggling to me how we can have the highest sewer rates of anybody, but so be it. But when I water my lawn, that water doesn't go into the sewer. And if I use a large amount of water to water my lawn, why is that not reflected in my bill every month? My average water bill is $150 in the winter. And with inflation going on, all $6 gas, you people want to raise rates. It seems to me they ought to look internally to see what they can do to cut expenses on some of this stuff. Just because you say they have to needs this new or that new doesn't mean necessarily that you can't cut costs somewhere. I find that hard to take. Yeah. And on your road fee, I do have a question about that. I'm paying a tough fee for a road that's never going to be repaired. It didn't even make the list, and I can't get anybody to even pave our road. There's 60 homes on a gravel road, and nobody seems to mind that. But you seem to get grant money for all kinds of projects, but no one wants to pave a road. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate the time. Take care.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else oppose the rate increase and want to speak?
Sorry, I was muted. Like, we have one more,
Okay.
or actually two.
Get out of here. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Could you
Okay.
please state your name?
Yes, I'm Margaret Nava,
Okay.
and so I realize you have come to the conclusion that there are no proponent. There's nobody that's advocating the rate increase. So I need to explain my own personal circumstance. I saw that your average for a family was $50 of water. When it was a great presentation, by the way, thank you. I mean, it covered a lot more than what I could digest, but $50 was the average water. And I have to say that my house, we have only 2 adults. And this month, my bill is $55 just for the water. And it's winter, I'm not watering lawn. I mean, honestly, we haven't even done a lot of wash. And so I see that my $55 is above the $50 average. And with only 2 people in the house, I'm just looking at the city of Newberg. I don't know, like the gentleman before, I'm not sure how they're getting all their numbers. My total water bill, including all the fees, sewer storm fees, etc., This month is $186. And like I said, there's only 2 of us. So I figure if there's 5,000 houses in Newberg, I don't know if that's reasonable. But if there's 5,000 houses in Newberg and there's only 2 of us, so I assume that everybody, most people that have 2 people living in the house are gonna pay what I pay. So 5,000 times 186 is $930,000 in 1 month to cover all of these fees and debt and so forth. But really, we're looking at close to $1 million really a month. And I think maybe the city of Newberg should try to set a ceiling on what it charges its citizens and then try to work their budget in under that ceiling. That's my personal opinion. And I know a lot of people are just really also in my condition. This is Newberg has extremely high water bills. And I don't seem to agree with like I should be below the average because there's only 2 of us, and lo and behold, I'm above the average. And I just don't know how all these figurings go on. But there you are. That's thank you for letting me have some input. And the presentation was really great. It was, I need to study it more. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Margaret. Okay, anybody else?
There's one more. Let me promote them.
Hi, thank you. My name is Allison Childs.
Right.
So I appreciate the chance that you guys are opening this up to the public and having this discussion openly and transparently. When I moved to Newberg about 12 years ago, I was shocked at the total price of the water bill here. And I feel like that has happened with everyone I've known who has moved into the area. We have by far the highest water rates in the area already. So when I got the notice that they were considering raising rates, I was honestly shocked. And I was interested to come today to hear the reasonings behind it. And I understand the points that were presented in the presentation, but there has to be a different way because the cities all around us, they're all experiencing the same growth issues and the same requirements to maintain their water lines and whatnot. And yet our water bills are so much higher than everyone else's already that just passing expenses down to the consumers who really don't get a choice in the matter can't be the only option. So a raise of 10%, while that won't break the bank for me, as we've heard from other people, it can make a big difference for them, especially in a place where the water bill is already incredibly expensive compared to our neighbors in Sherwood and McMinnville and the other towns in our area. So I would encourage the professionals here to go to other communities, find out what they are doing. How are they surviving with such lower rates and still able to provide the same service that we are getting here? The first time someone moves into our neighborhood, we have a social media group, and the first thing that we always hear is there must be a leak in our pipe somewhere. The water bill was so high. And it instantly becomes the same conversation of, oh no, that's just where the city dumps all their extra fees because we don't have a choice and we have to pay for it anyway. And it's just really frustrating to see that conversation come up over and over again. It's clear to me that most of my neighbors feel the same way about this. I was surprised at how few people came today, but I do think there has to be a different way. I would, in fact, like to see our water prices go down. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right. Does anyone else wish to speak either against or if they're undecided and they'd like to present testimony? Please speak up now.
Jim's hand is up again. Jim, if you can lower your hand, or do you want to speak again? Okay, he lowered his hand. No one else has their hand raised.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody in the public. I guess we will close the public testimony then if there if there isn't anyone else who wishes to present. Okay. Right. And now we will have some recommendations from the staff. Can you hear me, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want to have some conversation about some of the points that were raised, or I don't want to take us out of order, but Katie or Karin can correct me if that's the case.
That works if you guys want to.
I can address a couple of things, and Karin or other staff on the public works side might be able to address some of the other things. I was trying to keep up on my notes with some of the questions and points that were raised. With respect to cost containment, so what we are presenting tonight in terms of the capital improvement plans, there were multiple iterations for the systems of looking at the significant needs that have been identified in the master plans, which are have been developed in order to help the city meet its regulatory and other requirements. Even within that, there were multiple iterations of the prioritization and the phasing of those projects. And there were a number of projects for the water system that were pushed beyond the planning period in order to keep the rate increases within the percentage, the 4% that had been projected last year, for example, for water, and then sewer at 3.5%. So what's presented tonight is not where we started. And so there is a lot of back and forth within the staff and to some extent with the committee as well to try to refine where there is flexibility, and there isn't always flexibility in terms of when to the timing of some of those projects. The other thing is that the new water treatment plant will save. Sometimes you have to spend money to save money, and the operation and maintenance costs will decrease once that new plant is online. That has not been factored into this yet because it's going to be some years before that plant is online. So, and I think in years ahead that that will become more clear. I think, there's some conservative estimates right now about how much savings will be. But Karin, did you want to say anything else on the cost containment issue?
I'll mention a couple other things is that that we are continuing to go after additional grants. As Deb noted, based on things that are coming out of the federal government, there's a lot more infrastructure money available that has not been available in the last 5 to 10 years. So we will continue to apply for that. And if we get money, then we can look at reducing rates in the future, but I can't guarantee that we're going to get them, but we'll continue to apply for everything that we can. The other thing I wanted to note is that, yes, new development does pay. They pay what's called a system development charge. It's a one-time fee that every new development pays that helps pay for these projects that we're paying for now. But also future growth. So they do make those payments also. And then the other thing is that we are also continuing to look at other things for cost containment. The solar farm that was just installed at the wastewater treatment plant. The estimate is, and we won't know for sure until we get through a summer and get some of those numbers, but the estimate is that we will be hopefully reducing some of the electrical bills that come out of the wastewater treatment plant, which is one of our largest electrical users, by 15 to 20%. So again, we're continuing to look at some of those other options. That's one thing that we will certainly look at when we build a new water treatment plant. Can we make that a portion solar also? So we are continuing to look at some of those options, and we'll continue to look at some of those options for that cost containment. So know that is continuing to happen as we move forward. So I think and then the other thing I wanted to note, and Deb can help me on this one also, is how other cities pay. I know that comes up a lot, in particular McMinnville. One thing to note is that McMinnville Water and Light, they subsidize their water rates. They have large acreages of timber in the Cascades, and they do timber sales every year that helps pay for some of their water costs and brings those costs down quite significantly. So that's one thing. It's tough to compare us to McMinnville because we just don't have that resource for the water. And then some of the other locales that Deb showed, some of them are jurisdictions that have a regional type of facility. Sherwood in particular, it's Sherwood and the city of Wilsonville. They share a bunch of costs, which we don't do at this point in time. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And then the other one for transportation in particular is that there's a lot of jurisdictions. So McMinnville, again, before we implemented the transportation utility fee, we talked with them about how they were doing their road projects. And what they did was they issued a bond. So everybody's paying for the transportation on their property tax bill instead of monthly. So they're still paying for it. It's just how you're paying for it. And one thing to keep in mind is and it's one thing we looked at when we did the transportation utility fee, is that if you put it on the property tax bill, those entities that don't pay property taxes, churches in particular, nonprofits, George Fox University, they don't pay property taxes. So they wouldn't pay for any of the transportation fees. And what's one of the reasons we went the way we did was to try to capture all of those trips and all of that impact to the system. So I just wanted to note that in case anybody had questions or that kind of stuff.
A couple other things I would add is with respect to how the sewer rates are calculated. You're exactly right that when you water your lawn or use water outside, that it's not returning to the sewer system, and therefore you are not charged for the use that your water use in the summer that exceeds your winter average. So the industry standard, because we don't meter sewer discharge separate from what comes into the house or what comes in on the pipe and then sometimes is used outside. So the approach is to base it on the winter average when the majority of use is inside and does return to the sewer system. So that's one thing to note. Your winter use sets your sewer bill for the rest of the year, whereas your monthly water use is what the water charge is based on. The rate increases that we talk about are annual increases, and so 4% is 4% in January 1, 2023, and another 4% 2024. That's why when you add those together, that yeah, it's greater than 4%. Just to echo what Karin said about it's very difficult to compare with other cities. When I've been working with the city of McMinnville for years, and when I first started working with them, they had the highest sewer rates in the state. But because they were at that time doing a major investment in their wastewater treatment plant and their infiltration and inflow reduction, some of the same things that the city has done more recently. And so as we see, as these things change over time and relative position changes, and the regional factor cannot be understated in terms of when you have more cities that are served collectively by a single system, there's a lot of cost sharing that can happen there. And the majority of cities that are shown in that comparison, while some of them share water systems, most of them share sewer systems. A lot of Washington County and of the similar cities that are on that comparison are members of clean water services. And so their stormwater and their sewer is a regional system. So it's just different circumstances and different places in the investment cycle. So I think those were the notes that I had.
Can I make a comment and perhaps a recommendation? In that, in hearing the testimony, the general consensus that I picked up is rates are really high. Why are they so high? It's hard to cut costs that much, but I think we need to do a better job of communicating to everyone what the capital improvements are and how much each one costs. Because people have no idea that that's a significant part of what they're paying is for these capital improvements. You know, what, the $12 million for the new water treatment plant, a new pump station, new pipelines for the stormwater system. I mean, Deb, you went through that one summary sheet listing some of the major ones, but I think a lot of concerned citizens would appreciate learning, well, how much is each one of them? And why is it needed? Well, we have a failing pump station, so we have to replace it, or something like that. And it seems to me that perhaps a single sheet could be made up listing these upcoming improvements, what the estimated costs are, maybe a phrase or a simple sentence of justifying why we need to do it soon, as far as the priorities that we've figured out. And then just like you did with the announcement of this public hearing, attach it as a PDF to people's water bills. And then those that want to open up and see the details, oh, well, gosh, all these billions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars that needs to go to this. It doesn't reduce the bill at all, but maybe it makes it a little easier pill to swallow as far as what needs we have to address coming up.
So, and what I'll throw out there, Ned, and yeah, we can certainly simplify it, but we do have on the city's webpage, the 5-year capital improvement program is on the webpage. And so they can see all of the detail, the costs that are estimated, why we're doing it, all of those types of things. And there is a presentation that I give to the council every year on the projects that are coming up for the next year, which actually is Monday night. So I'll be giving them that for the next fiscal year, but certainly that information is all available on the city's webpage. If you go to the engineering page, and then there's a button for capital improvement program, and you can get there. And I do have one single spreadsheet that has them all for the next 5 years. And certainly we could put that up on the webpage also to allow that summary of all of those projects. That one doesn't necessarily tell you what each one of the projects is or why we're doing it, but it is one spreadsheet that shows all of them. Okay. For the next 5 to 6 years, I think I have on the list. So, but yes, the full 5-year plan is actually on the city's webpage.
Okay, that's a great resource. I don't mean to degrade it or belittle it all, but how many people regularly check the city's website? concerned citizens, but I honestly think we need to make it more available out there than just that. That's just my opinion. I know it takes a little bit of extra work, but with that as a starting point, it may be not too much extra work, but just like, the announcement that went out to everyone's, water bill as a PDF, I thought was a great way to do it. And then everybody has it. The people, all the neighbors that are, as the one person said, everyone that she met moving in, why is my water bill so high? Well, how many people say, go to the city's website and there's your answer? I don't think it's used as much as it could be or should be. So maybe we need to do a better job of distributing the information.
Yeah, well, we would have to figure out how to do it because the CIP is like 60 some pages. And obviously
know.
we don't
Yeah.
want to make 60 pages to
Right.
everybody.
But no, well, for example, the summary that Deb gave us, that one slide, those are the major ones. And there were like 5 or 6 within each of the 4 categories. So, if you just do those major ones, I think even that would give a good indication of where the money's going. And then it wouldn't be a 60-page document, certainly.
To add on to that, I think the comparison of Newberg to Sherwood or McMinnville, I think that we had that in one of our presentations where we looked at all of the different communities and what it was that they're paying for and what we're paying for. I do think that that's probably relevant because I moved here from Sherwood. Sherwood was more expensive. It was. But the biggest difference here is that we pay for more things. You know what I mean? We didn't pay for streets in Sherwood. It was just water. So I think that adding that as well is, to what Ned was saying, so that, consumers understand what it is that they're paying for.
Yeah.
Very, very good comments. Anybody else?
Yes, I just want to agree with Ned. So I asked for this initially, is a 1-pager to clearly explain why we're doing what we're doing, what we're paying, why we're paying it, right? And Deb did a great job, by the way. I don't know if I gave her that feedback as a first attempt to go off and make it really clean. On one slide, water. We're going up. This is why. This is what's going on. For every slide, that's a handful. So don't send out as a Newberg citizen a 60-page anything. I don't want that. All right, that's for the engineering department that works for the city of Newberg. That's for your analysis to do that. The website at Newberg is not very easy. I have 2 engineering degrees, and I get lost in that thing all the time. You put something up there, it's not trivial. A PDF that's simple that says, hey, this is the analysis, this is the summary, a 1-pager, water, sewer, right? And go through each one and what's going on and why. And then at the very end, maybe as a backup, here's a comparison. Now, we've done the comparison analysis, put it in there, right? So say, by the way, this is how each one of these are differ for the different areas. And you put we have little blurbs. In fact, our facilities, right? Cities don't share facilities. We have our own. We're on life cycles. Okay, cool. And explain a little bit of this. I think that will go a long way to helping.
Absolutely. Very good, very helpful comments. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, I mean, I'd like to point out that I think the presentations that we received were great, and we had all the information that we needed to come to the decision that we did. Every person has an opportunity in the city of Newberg, to volunteer for one of these committees to see how things operate, and I know it's great to come to a public meeting and to complain and say, oh, the water bills are high. They might be, but there's reasons for that. And I thought that they were explained before the people spoke tonight, the public comments. It's a 1-page document that you gave to any of the people that spoke tonight. It's not going to make a difference to them. I think it is a good idea. And I do agree with Ned that we should put something like that so people can understand, in their bill, what's going on and what the projects are, because, there's a lot of projects that get done that people don't ever see. they're never really gonna, I mean, they might see the building for the new wastewater plant, but they're not gonna go tour it. They're not gonna go inside and see how nice it is and see how state of the art it is. So I
You
think
can-
something like that. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, you can go tour it if anybody wants to, FYI, just throw that in there.
Right, look at that. So yeah, I think we had all the information. I think we came to the right decision, but I do think that Ned is right as well, that if we can simplify it and just a simple PDF and a bill would be a fantastic idea. That was a grand slam, Ned.
Okay. All right, anyone else want to make any commentary before we start deliberating? All right. Thank you very much, members of the staff. That was very helpful indeed, and appreciate it. Good comments from everyone. Why don't we go into deliberations now, unless anybody has anything else? Okay. Does anyone have any issues that they would like to discuss with the committee before we come to a vote? Nobody? Okay, well, I guess it's decision time then. Would someone please make a motion for a vote?
First, I have a mechanical question. Are we voting on each of the 4 segments separately or all together as one package?
Okay, well, that was the next question, whether or not people want to vote for the individual rates or just vote across the board for the proposed rate increases. Anybody have any comments on that?
I think that one vote over all the stuff that we've talked about before would be cleaner, but it's up to anybody. Anybody's changed their mind since the last vote, I guess.
Right.
I
Just so-
second the motion for one vote.
That you're seconding the motion?
I second the
We
motion.
don't
for
need a
one vote.
motion for that.
A motion for a motion.
All right. All right. So it looks like, is it correct that everybody wants to just make one vote and not vote for the individual rate increases? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. All right then. Okay, all in favor of the proposed rate increases, please raise your hand. Syra, do you have that?
Sorry, give me 1 second. Looks like everyone is voting yes, besides Sean, who is absent.
Okay, and we do have a quorum, correct?
Yeah.
Tonight. Okay, so it looks like the majority is in favor of the rate increases. And that's our decision for tonight. Okay, is there anything else?
We forgot to second that motion, Brenda.
Oh, I think, oh, okay. Or
Or did you hear a second? I'm sorry.
seconded the motion.
I'll second.
Okay,
Now everyone can vote. I'm sorry about that.
sorry about that. All right. Okay, all in favor of the proposed rate increases, please raise your hand.
Seven yeses.
All right. Okay, and since we have a quorum, I guess we've all voted in favor. And who is the one, just as a question, who is the, who presents that to the city council? That we've all voted in favor?
It's probably going to be me, or maybe Deb will be there,
All right,
or Karin might be there also.
all
It will be
right,
one of the 3 of us.
okay, sounds good. All right, anybody have anything else?
Just to follow up on what I was wondering about, if you come up with that one-page summary that we talked about, maybe you could, since this is our last meeting, maybe you could email it to all of us, you know, maybe a draft or something before it goes out on everyone's water bill statement. Maybe we get a preview of it and just make sure it's nice and smooth or whatever. Is that possible? Or
You wanted to see it before it goes to council or before it?
no. Well, I was talking about the communication to the public. Remember, we
Oh.
talked about the capital improvement, sort of a one-page summary, you know. If
Sure.
you could, I'm not sure who would be drafting that, you know, something simple with the basics, but just that, I was wondering if you could send that out to us, you know, to see it before it goes out to the public. That's all.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you very much, everybody, for all your hard work, and thanks for coming tonight. And I'm glad that we've had a resolution to the issues. Okay, does anybody have anything else at all?
I just wanted to say from staff's point of view, I appreciate all your time and effort to sit and listen to us, you know, for the last 6 months or however long it's been. We can't do it without you. So I do want to say thank you for that. And asking great questions, you know, that always helps.
Well, you guys are
Yeah.
the experts, so we appreciate that. So,
Yeah, this is Paul. I echo what Colin has mentioned as well. I appreciate everybody's input here. It's been challenging. I certainly understand the situation here. Thank you all, including the public and their input.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody. And I think
Melanie wanted to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Melanie.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say a special thank you to Deb. Everything that you presented was just so concise and just you did an excellent job, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely. I second that.
I'd triple
Really?
that. No, Deb, I really appreciate the thoroughness you do. It's very helpful.
Well, you all, the questions that are raised really help us to, you know, prepare information for you too. So thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
I would say for our public folks, all the meetings are publicly held. So there's a series of them and they are very insightful and they take a couple hours for them to go through all the details and it's well worth it. It's a great journey.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I guess the meeting is adjourned then.
okay, thank you.
Good night.
Great. Thank you,
Okay,
everybody. Night.
bye. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Okay, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.